Hello again, everyone. I just wanted to elaborate on something that I touched on in yesterday's episode, which is why it's a good idea to have a pair of open back and closed back headphones. Now, for whatever reason, I was very averse to open back headphones when I first started mixing. I thought they were pointless, that they were weird, that they weren't practical, probably because pretty much the only thing that open back headphones are good for is mixing. You can't record live instruments with them or, like drums or vocals, because the click or the track will come through the open back part of it. But if we think about the fact that everything is a filter, you are a filter, the device you're listening on is a filter, the room you're in is a filter, then you can think of headphones as like tiny rooms for your ears. And when you have a wall this close to your ear, then it's going to push the sound back into your head differently than, say, a pair of headphones that didn't have that wall up and lets the sound travel through it, thus affecting your perception of that sound. For example, bass. Open back headphones let the bass breathe more freely in a way without getting trapped in the tiny rooms that are your left and right headphones, while closed back headphones kind of push the bass back towards your ear. This happens with all frequencies, but it tends to be most noticeable in the low end because bass is more E. You know what I mean? For this reason, open back headphones are thought to be more accurate, or at least closer to what it's like to be mixing in a room, but without the added potential imperfections that your room might have, affecting your perception of certain frequencies. But I want to talk about the word imperfections for a little bit, because literally everything has imperfections, even open back headphones. They're just different imperfections. And as I said in episode 2, the previous video, it's all about taking the average of all of these imperfections. For example, I love bass. I know this about myself. I love low frequencies. I listen to music in my car with the bass knob turned up 2 rungs and the treble and the mids in the center. I use Urban Ears for casual listening, which I also know boost the bass, sometimes to the point of distortion. And finally, I mix on Yamaha HS8s that I know are way too close to the wall in my home studio, which is just like mixing in closed back headphones with a wall right next to your ear. It affects the perception of the bass as well. But what are you going to do? This is the only room I have that they could be in, and it's a small home studio, and you got to work with what you have. All that said, when I mix on my open back DT990s, which are probably the most accurate listening device that I have, I know that they don't treat the bass the way I like to hear bass in casual listening. So I have to keep this in mind because I'm a filter too. And I've done some mixes on these headphones and, early in the morning when my partner is asleep. That's a good use for open back headphones, by the way. And then gone to play the mix on the speakers in my car or my studio monitors, only to find that I boosted the bass way too much to compensate. Another learning experience I had recently was when I took my HS8s to a totally different room. I had a listening party for my album release. I rented out a space in Brooklyn, and it was just a totally different room. It was much bigger, it had higher ceilings, it was kind of long, and I was placing these speakers on a 4 by 8 foot table. And to sound check before people got there, I started playing this one song from the album Answers, which has like a very heavy 808 kick at the beginning. And the speakers were towards the back of the table, towards the back wall of the room, closer to the wall. Still farther from the wall than they are in my home studio, but, because this was a bigger room, I had to turn the speakers up louder in order to fill the room with sound. And I gotta tell you, I almost started crying because I thought the mix sounded like shit, that the kick drum was way too loud and bassy to the point that it was uncomfortable to listen to. But then I remembered something and I pulled each speaker up further towards the front of the table, farther away from the wall, and all of a sudden, the bass drum wasn't too boomy and bassy anymore. Now, there are a lot of sources out there that say that your speakers should be placed at least 8 inches or more ideally 2 feet from your wall. But then again, it depends on the size of your room. So there's something called the 38% rule that says that the best listening position is 38% into the length of your room when measured from either the front or the rear wall. However, obviously, this is not an option for a lot of people who have home studios because we have to fit the entire rest of our studio in there, and you have to have room to stand as a musician. Don't let that stop you. Just know about what potential biases your room or yourself might have and keep those in mind when you're mixing.